evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the revival of our beloved drive-in culture. Joined as always with my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, Mark.
Happy to be heard.
And today we have a really fun one because we're bringing in one of our resident artists who really came into the family as a real treat and a real surprise, and really out of nowhere, it felt like. So we're going to be talking to the one, the only Tom Bifulco, who does amazing poster art throughout the season at the Mahoning. Say hello, Tom.
Hey, guys. Thrilled to be here. Is the music playing?
That comes in later. Mark puts that in later.
All right.
And yes, in case people don't know, it is the Puppies and Kitties music.
On a loop. That's like how you, I mean, it's great at first, but then if you want to just like torture somebody in a basement, you just
it
play
plays
that
in my dreams.
Oh, I keep it very low in the mix.
All right, good. I don't envy your dreams, Virgil, because
it's funny because it's drive-in music, intermission music in general. You know, it's like those little pieces that you hear every single night that are just, in my mind, staples of the drive-in. So it's a weird thing. You know, everybody has those things that are stuck in their head. And for me, it's it kind of rightfully so, I guess. It's the intermission reel music. But Tom, let's talk, brother. So let's start from the beginning. Not the beginning of your life, but at least the beginning of our connection.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that beginning, but
we'll get into the early days.
Sure, all those painful memories.
How did and when did you come into the fold at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater? Because you really have become somebody who knocks out posters for us on a regular basis, monthly.
I know. I'm like the pinch hitter of like poster art at the Mahoning right now. Like, you know.
It's nuts. You know, it really is. We love working with artists, and I envy artists so much. People who have the ability to bring that to life on a page, you know? And for you, my connection to you came through somebody else. I don't remember being the one who was connected to you first. So how did that connection happen?
Well, this is kind of how it started. I'll go to the beginning of how I found out about the place. So I'm a fan of like James Rolfe, like Cinemassacre, the angry video game nerd and all of those things and whatnot. And they did like a Ninja Turtles review on their YouTube channel. And they actually talked about seeing that double feature at the Mahoning Drive-In where they
right, James is there, yeah.
And they talked about the documentary. I'm like, what? This sounds so like amazing. Like this is real. So I sought out the documentary. I found it on, streaming on Amazon Prime, and I probably watched it. Oh God, the first time I watched it, I was blown away. Because in my mind, I'm like, this doesn't exist anymore. Not by me, at least not by a long shot. So when I saw everything that went into it and just like the passion behind everything, I was like, wow, this is big. It's like when you feel that moment where you really just discovered something in your life that like this is really important. I mean, of course you would know.
Well, that happens with music, with movies, with a lot of things. Something that you feel like you have this discovery and it really speaks to you at a specific time or whatever the case is. And it just becomes part of, your life and what you do on a day-to-day basis, which is the beautiful thing about the fan base is the culture seeps into people's hearts and they really want to get behind what feels like the movement of trying to revive something that people love.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a feeling of wanting to be, of course, as a creative type, as you probably know, you strive to achieve greatness in yourself, but there's also the desire to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's kind of what I think I got out of it. And one, it was not just like a cool place to go, but it was you guys are like a preservation house in a lot of ways. So that really stuck with me. And I would always have the doc on when I was like working on stuff, just in the background. So I probably seen it like 50 times just without even watching it. And thinking in the back of my head, like, I'm going to go there one day. And then I'm looking at the Instagram page. I'm seeing a lot of the posters that are coming out. In fact, I think a lot of the stuff that Hayden did really stuck out to me. I was like, this is cool. I would hang this on my wall. Like, this is awesome. I can't believe this is happening. And then I saw, I think, late 2019 that there was like call for artists. Like, hey, do you want to be involved with this? Like, contact us, send us your work. We'll let you know what we can do for you. So I was like, holy crap, this is my opportunity. So, I've been doing a lot of random stuff here and there, getting some freelance commissions, and I always had my roots in film and my passion for that. And so I sent the main email some of my samples, be like, hey, I'd like to be involved. Tell me what
I remember seeing this, and even your samples were very much movie related, and there was some stuff in your back catalog that was even, I think, video game related. And at that time, we were in talks with, ironically, in a weird crossover, James and the Angry Video Game Nerd guys, to do another video game weekend. So I remember now, I saw those samples and was like, this dude would probably crush doing like caricature stuff of Mario, or at the time we had Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter booked.
Yeah, and that when you hit me up with that, I was like, this is either destiny or like the weirdest coincidence of all time.
The fact that you discovered us through that and then got offered that event, that is pretty weirdly destined.
it was amazing. So I was like, holy crap, I gotta get to work on this. And like, I was like, this is like the perfect start. I forget when it was. It must have been like
it was
December.
We had that event booked in 2019. We had it booked in 2019 is when we must have started talking, because we originally had a date for the event and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I was about to say, what could go wrong?
Yeah, yes. And it's funny enough, because we're talking about this in 2022 and that event still has not happened. And we're still looking for a date that works out with James and the gang. But we have tickets sold to that event. It's going to rock. We have an amazing poster too.
You know what? And when, here's the thing, that poster, because I did that real quick and I got too excited when I did that. And you know what? I thought like, I'm gonna. I made a bunch of mistakes that that are just amateur that I'm ashamed of now, because I was so excited. It's like, damn, I'm gonna hand letter this right on the poster and it's gonna be cool. And I stupidly painted the date. I was like, shit.
Who would have thought that's gonna change?
I think I changed it like twice. I was like, but now it's like, if it even happens in 2022, it's like, I don't even like looking at the poster anymore, because it's like, it's 2 years old. I'm like, this is not even like,
well, you'll have to do a redux and we'll sell the original.
I have one in the chamber that's like more than a germ of a night. It's actually a pretty tight sketch of kind of, I got a better idea of it, especially after having done so many posters.
Yeah,
that was like the prototype. Be like,
it blew me away though, and I remember I sent it to the team. We have like a core chat of managers at the theater, and James and Mark, everybody was like, "Whoa!" It had like 30 characters on it from Mortal Kombat, from Street Fighter. It was like, where did this dude come from? And we get a lot of submissions for art, and try to work with a lot of new artists. And this was one that just right out the gate, we couldn't give this guy any notes. It was just like, he had such a style and presentation to it, and certainly was playing into what we were looking for. It's almost like you knew ahead of time, which obviously you did, what we were looking for, But that is it. 2019, that seems like so like yesterday, but it seems so long ago as well.
Oh God, yeah. And we should involve that somehow. I still have the original
Oh,
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
you know what,
We'll
well,
have to share it up on the
share it.
social.
Well, I was thinking like this thing, it's so dated now with like I think the original date was in May or something like
It
that.
was
And
like May 2019. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
it was
now
way back, and then it got moved and moved and moved.
now it's like a collector's item, what could have been, it's
But yeah, I'm remembering back, and I think definitely Hayden's art was the shift for us. We started doing posters really early, and there were really some great ones that Kevin Neese was doing for us at the time. And they were amazing, but we really started leaning into the posters when we got introduced to Hayden, which was the first VHS Fest. So, and that's really what just elevated it to another level of like bringing in unique artists and people who have kind of a touch and a feel, and it really shifted things. But it's amazing to think sharing that out there, it kind of inspired and then led another amazing artist to the family.
it was totally inspirational, and it presented an awesome opportunity. Be like, nobody gets to unless like it's commissioned or anything like that. Like, movie studios don't do illustrated posters anymore or anything like that. Not it's very rare. And but then you have like a lot of these sites like Mondo and stuff, and they do excellent like screen printed posters inspired by certain artists. I'm like, this is kind of like that same opportunity, except it's a little more unique. And my approach is often it's one thing to do just a straight poster of the movie, but you want it to have an element of the actual drive-in be present there, which I really try to do. And I want to tell a story in the poster as well as it just being like a catching image. In fact,
absolutely.
The second poster that I did there, which I think was that was the one where I
technically would have been your first because we never released
it. Technically my first printed piece, my first published work there was the Universal Monster Mash 4, I think it was.
Crap, yes.
Yeah.
And that was another one that just blew people's minds.
That was a sellout too. And I was like, I think it was that I took a lot of pride in, because I think Sandy told me that like we only had 2 poster sellouts in 2020. One was for the Mad Max weekend, which was the first show I ever went to, but we'll get back to that in a second. Awesome. And which was Hayden that did that one, and the other was mine. I was like, holy crap, only 2 people got sellouts, and I'm one of them?
That's awesome.
That was such a cool feeling. And I think there was
setting that bar early, and that for sure. I mean, we can talk about your first experience at the Mahoning, but I remember you coming onto the lot and being there, and you got along with everybody right away. It's like you immediately were embraced into the family, which that happens, where people will come in and it almost clicks instantly, where it's like, this guy's one of us, like he's in it the same reason that we're in it. He anything that he can do to help the fight and the effort. It's pretty much all of us every weekend. None of us are banking on the Mahoning Drive-In. It's all a passion project to bring these shows to life. So that's really what I remember when actually meeting you, is having that spark of being like, this dude's totally like-minded. He loves the same stuff we do. When we program, it's for a guy like this. But why don't you talk about your first trip? You said Mad Max 2020?
Mad Max 2020, yeah. So I think when lockdown happened, I was super bummed, because I was like, damn it, now this throws a wrench in all my aspirations here. Little did I know, I was like, wait, no, this is like, they're in the perfect position to be open and operate almost as normal as usual,
Yeah, it was crazy. The drive-in is, the way that it's set up, it's almost COVID safe immediately. You're in your own bubble,
You were ahead of the curve when everyone else was struggling to catch up and try to adapt to the situation that you were already doing. I didn't even attempt to look at like other pop-up drive-ins or anything around me, because it's like, it's not the same, and I was like, we're making the trip out, and this is the perfect weekend to do it. We tried doing Friday. That was like the first movie, and Road Warrior, but that was sold out. But I was like, oh wait, this Saturday is still cool, because they're gonna show black and chrome on 35 millimeter.
Yes.
And we're like, let's do it. So we all went there, and amateur mistakes didn't bring, like, it was the summer, but it got cold that night. And we're like, oh my God.
Weren't ready for the temps.
No, not at all. So learned a lot. All the sweaters were sold out. So we're like, damn it, we're gonna have to suffer through this. So we went there, and I introduced myself to you for the first time. I popped into the projection booth. I'm like, hey, I'm the guy that did the.
I'm that dude. Yeah.
I'm that guy. And we met. It was very, very nice, very cordial. And I asked you. That's when I think you gave me the gig for the Universal Monster poster.
Yeah, I remember literally popping the calendar out and being like, what do we need? What do we need? The year before, we had my friend Stacy Fervinger do a poster for Universal Monsters, and it crushed. It was great. It's one that we do a limited run, and like you said, normally they're available throughout the next couple months as that run sells out at later shows. But every now and then we will get that sellout where that initial run it's gone,
Yeah, that's always awesome when that happens.
What an intro to come in on. It was great because that Mad Max event, we really promoted it as mask up and come to the wasteland. Yeah. We're living in the apocalypse. Come out,
Like this is insane because you had people in costumes, crazy looking cars, like people just chop their cars in half and
it was
up. And I remember listening to the radio show, which was like, this is like another element that's awesome. And then you announced, like, hey, the racetrack called. They said that tonight's their opening night, and there's gonna be a lot of noise. So sorry about that. And you're like, are you kidding me? That makes it even better, because like that's one of the things that really gets me about that place is that there's forget this 4D immersion that all these other theaters try to do. There's stuff really happening, and those cars were roaring in the background, like behind you as you're watching this movie in front of you, as like actual cars are crashing into each other, people are getting slaughtered, and it's like, I cannot believe where I am right now. It was like, like I said, there's other drive-in theaters and they're trying to do this, and you guys are like the uncut cocaine of driving. it's like, oh my Jesus. So it was an awesome first night, and it was a beautiful night, like no light pollution around that place, which that's another reason that if you've never gone, just go there on a clear night and look up, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And
Faye gave us our quickest sellout with that event, and she's connected with the Wasteland Gathering, which is like a big Mad Max fandom. And once that flag got raised that this was happening, especially during a time when Wasteland couldn't, people came out of the woodwork.
And that was when you had capacity restrictions at the time, I believe, right? Like you couldn't build a lot.
Our normal capacity, at least what we pushed this last year, was 800. But during the pandemic, we went down to, I think our biggest night was like 570, something like that. So we did that in order to keep the space between the cars. That was the big thing when things first hit, is the distance, keeping the distance, the 6 feet,
Oh, yeah.
Well, but it really worked out. Things, as everybody knows, it was our biggest season as far as attention being brought to the drive-in. Like you said, tons of pop-ups, and we knew that the culture was shifting when we saw Walmart announcing that they will be doing drive-in movies in their parking lots during the pandemic. It's like, wow, what happened? What happened here?
Oh
but you'd start seeing the drive-in in commercials, and that's really what I think started a wider resurgence for the drive-in in a weird way. The pandemic swept in and people started looking for alternatives and realized, oh wait, this thing has been here and offering this my whole life. I just never, had attention.
And it's a total refresher for me. If I could go off on another tangent, one of the other reasons why it appeals so big to me, and I'm thinking about it. I think about it all the time, because leading up to the discovery of the place, I really developed a strong, I still have it to a degree, but I developed a strong disillusionment to just the regular theater long time building, and it's just like I don't even want to go anymore, which is a horrible feeling, a really horrible thought to have, to be like I think I'd be okay with just watching a new
Stuff
movie
at home, right?
and that's kind of sad. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't feel sorry for them, for this environment that's been cultivated that just doesn't. I don't get anything out of this. And going to the Mahoning, it's like, no, this is the place. This is
I
where
worked in
you
that for
feel. Oh
years,
God.
working in the indoor theaters. You see how sanitized the experience is and how kind of, you're renting the time. And Mark talks about this often, where it's that spark of the midnight screenings, of the anticipation for something. It's now, I even saw it. I was like, oh, the Batman's coming out. I'm going to be really excited to see it Thursday. And then I see, oh, it's releasing Tuesday night fan screenings, Wednesday night fan screenings. I'm like, what do I got to do to avoid spoilers?
And here's another thing that really kind of like disgusted me about it. And this isn't a criticism of the theater itself.
No.
It's a criticism of
The culture.
the culture. And like when I saw Spider-Man, new Spider-Man, which was I thought was excellent, and packed theater, but everyone's having a good time. And as the movie's over and the light slips up, and I'm like, there's like the seats next to me, they just left all their garbage everywhere. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing this. I'm like, this is like, you had this taken away from you, speaking to the audience, you had this taken away, and now you come back and you just treat it exactly how you treated it before everything.
It becomes a luxury, like I see it all the time. It's, I'm putting my money down, so I am now the king of this establishment. And I will treat it any way that I like.
Absolutely. And so for people to take it for granted, it's like, you don't deserve this, It's like, why don't you?
That's what ruins it for families and for people who really go to have an experience at the theater, is the amount of times I've had to go into a theater to remove somebody who's just talking or obnoxiously loud, or came there just to hang out with their friends or whatever. It's, there's elements, I guess, of that at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, but it's so kind of, spaced out that it's built in for people to have their own individual kind of spaces,
Yeah, like I think I remember listening. Who was it? Was it Andy? He was on one of the early episodes, and he was talking about how, like, the party's in the back. If you want to really watch the movie, just sit towards the front. Like, that's actually
it's true. I mean, it's true.
Kind of cool. I could dig that, because it's an outdoor space, so like, it's not like you can't like hear everybody in the back, and most of them aren't screaming either, Yeah. And it's like, it's you could make your own environment. And the environment that's already made at the drive-in is comfortable and cool enough as it is. With the indoor theaters, you can keep those recliner seats. I don't want to be sitting in somebody else's filth, like.
It's sad because like when I was at the theater, I was like, wouldn't it be great if there were these fan events that they're still trying to do, but kicked up an element, whether it had costume characters or sets and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they never wanted to put that effort in. They never wanted to put that passion in. It was, hey, here's what corporate's telling us to do, so here's what the standardized thing is going to happen,
The thing that makes the drive-in special and a lot of these independent theaters special is booking is a lost art, and it's coming back in a lot of big ways. And that's something that I feel like a lot of these first run places, a lot of these big major theater chains, it's gonna bite them, because sure, those big movies can make like $1 billion, but like, I think their lifeline is getting shorter and shorter, and it's the writing's been on the wall for a while now.
We come from an era of art house movies and independent cinema, and to see, movies shift to the point where, I think it was George Clooney who said it recently, those movies don't go to theaters anymore. They're not successful in theaters. It's all big budget, monstrous things. And as that window closes, as far as the amount of money that a movie that isn't that can make, it's scary. But I guess maybe that is the plus of the streaming resurgence, or the streaming revolution that we're in now, is it gives that material a home and people can find it. But
more
that theatrical experience,
everything like that, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and it's a big deal. And one last thing on this matter is just like the sanitization of the digital format, which I have no issue with. I'm not like Carl. I'm okay. I am fine with it because I understand why. But at the same time, I understand what he's going for too, and myself, because you want to kind of, again, going back to an art house kind of preservation sort of deal with showing these films, you want to see everything in its imperfection because you're seeing the history of a print. It's the difference between generic painting example. The difference between seeing the highest resolution picture of the Mona Lisa and then seeing it in person. Granted, I've never seen the damn painting in person, so maybe my example's completely worthless. But you know what I mean. You want to see you
totally. It's that preservation.
Yeah,
it's the preservation angle of it. People feel like when they're there, they're supporting something bigger than I'm going out for an escape for a couple hours. They're really putting their support in a place that feels like it's important. And it is. It certainly is.
Absolutely.
But why don't we talk about some of your highlights as far as posters, so people who are fans can kind of connect the dots. What are some of the choice projects that you've done for us?
Well, we mentioned Universal Monster Mash. I did Monster Mash 4 and I did Monster Mash 5. So I did back-to-back Monster Mash.
5 was the one that had all the characters riding in the car, right?
Yes.
That's my favorite.
The one. And I also I got to do the t-shirt for that as well.
Yes.
Because that one actually that landed on, I think it was the 90th anniversary for Dracula.
That's right. And you did the birthday team.
It was the 90th for Dracula and Frankenstein and the 80th for the Wolfman. So I'm like, I give him a little credit here and there. So I put Wolfman taking a dog bowl, I thought it was again, it's like telling a story there in like a little picture. And the one with the car, I was kind of inspired by Mad Monster Party. That would be, I'd love to see that.
It's available. I think last I looked, I think it's maybe with Warner Brothers. But I think it's out there.
We might have to talk about that one. But I did those Universal Monster ones. I also did, what else? I did, that's the thing, you gave me too many last year. well, to go to the end of last season, this is funny. I did both Reese's Pieces, the Christina Ricci night, and Janet and Jamie. I did both of those posters. Funny story about those is, I forget when it was, but you had messaged me, be like, hey.
It was super last minute.
Last minute dropout. The person couldn't do it. Can you do it? And I'm like, dude, I'm in Hawaii. But thankfully, I had like other stuff I was working on at the time, so I brought my iPad, my laptop, tablet, all the stuff I needed to work on stuff. And I'm like, you are so lucky.
Not only did you do one for that weekend, you knocked them both out.
Banged them out, I think, in like 2 or 3 days. And I was pretty proud of how those came out. I was like,
great. We actually had somebody had Christina Ricci sign that promo.
Really? Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
It's at the theater. Yeah.
That one was going to be a tough one to do because I'm like, this title is so goofy. Like, how am I going to make this make sense? I don't even know if I can. It's a great title. Sorry. I'm thinking of another one. But I'm like, what? Let's just dive right into it. And I thought the colors worked perfectly. I was very happy with that came out. And the Janet and Jamie one, that one I did a lot sketchier than I usually do, but I think for the event,
I think it was great.
That's one of my favorites that I did last year. Another couple other not last minute, but like short turnaround ones. Frankenhooker.
That was
one of my favorite ones. I didn't get to make that show, which I'm annoyed at, but like that one was like a really cool one because I think I was working on another poster for another show. Oh God, I can't even remember what it was. But you're like, hey, if you got time after this is done, hang out Frankenhooker.
Be careful what you ask for, Tom.
Well, after the conversations we had, this past week and everything I agreed to so far, I'm already in trouble. So, little preview for this season.
That's right. One of my favorites is the Thanksgiving. You did the Thanksgiving poster that had Tom Hanks with the Mahoning t-shirt on, which as a standalone image is just so great.
That is cool, and I want that event to happen again because it's
a deep hole, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like, I think depending on the flicks he put up, you could definitely get some people coming out for that.
Hell yeah, Colin, his son is a fan of the documentary.
Yeah,
Al has told us many times. He actually told Al that he's watched the documentary multiple times. So pretty cool, right? Maybe if we keep pushing it, we'll get him.
Colin, call Tom.
Yeah,
get him out.
I loved the poster that you did for the Joe Bob weekend.
Oh my god!
Oh, that was beautiful. You gave me a big version of that signed by Joe Bob and Darcy, and that was awesome. That was one that I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of pressure to do this. That was one I was most nervous about, thinking about what you guys were going through. What I was going through was probably nothing compared to that level of stress, but still, thinking like, yeah, this is gonna be at this big event. There's gonna be, like hundreds and hundreds of people there. And,
right, national television show, shooting live, blah blah blah. Lot of moving parts.
Oh god, yeah, that was insane. That was really.
It's funny because we blew up the poster. I got 2 of them blown up. We put it on a crew only T-shirt, so only crew could have it, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
The amount of questions they got in the snack bar about the poster, like, hey, where's this available? Where can we get this? And even JB and Darcy were just like, this is so great, because it's the Mahoning marquee and Darcy sitting on top of it with the paint can, and if I'm remembering correctly, has the big Ernie lizard at the bottom.
Yeah, I made a giant Ernie on the bottom. I forget what this is. It might have been JT that suggested that. JT is secretly like the somewhat art director when it comes to my stuff. Not that I have to run anything past him, but he's like, hey, show me this stuff. He always wants to see it. So I send it to him. He will always throw suggestions at me, like, oh, you don't have to do this, but this would be cool. And more often than not, he's absolutely on point. I'm like, yeah, you know what, this does work better.
That's a great title to put on it, because me and Mark, we have a chat for the booking, and he's always involved because he taps into a deep fandom, kind of the I always looked at James as like the Comic-Con type of fandom. He's the guy who introduced me to conventions and things like that. So it's one of those things where he really does have a knack for knowing what a fan base would want,
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I learned this past season is if you're on the lot and he asks, is like, hey, are you doing anything? Be careful about saying no.
He's the ultimate recruiter.
He'd be like, hey, help me move this car. I'm like, all right, sure. So we're pushing this car. It ended up being one of those cars for the Joe Bob show. And it's like, it's rusted. It looks like there's bullet holes in it. I'm like, oh my God, what I got myself into here.
Yeah, our set pieces for Joe Bob were quite elaborate, including some derby cars. But yeah, it's wild. But why don't we talk about your did you really have a history with drive-ins before us, or were we your first?
I will say this was the first, though I will go into what my first real kind of encounter with film was, if that's kind of like a better substitute.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. You're the film, yeah.
This is very interesting. So I live in Long Island, I live in Nassau County, and my neighbor across the street, his father, he was in the police department, the NYPD, and he had like a film collection in his basement, mostly 16 millimeter stuff. Right. And he was a fan because as a police officer, you can actually get a lot of extra work being in movies. Like,
heck yeah, never thought that.
So, and forever, and my friend always pointed this out, and we always talked about it. His dad is in Ghostbusters. And, when they're driving up to the Shandor building and you have all the cops holding everybody back, he's in there for like a half second.
My dad.
I'm like, my neighbor's dad is in Ghostbusters.
That's crazy.
So that was like a weird connection. And every now and then, like maybe once or twice a year, he would set up in his basement. He would set up the projector and all this stuff. I'd never seen it before, but my friend was talking it up. So we go down there. It's dark in there. He's giving people popcorn. We're all sitting on the floor. There's this projector there. Like I said, I think it was 16 millimeter. I don't think it was 35.
Yeah.
But he had a screen pulled up, and he just played this show. It was fascinating to see the process. He had some Three Stooges, he had Laurel and Hardy. He had like this weird late 60s, early 70s.
He was schooling you guys.
Yeah, he had like this early adaptation of the Monkey's Paw. I'm like, this is super weird. And he had this was wild. He had a film print of Johnny Sacco and his flying robot.
Nice.
The English dub, of course, when it came out here. But I was like, what the hell is this? This is like the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And that got me super intrigued in just the process of everything, because it felt different than watching something on video, than watching it on even in the regular theater when they were probably projected film at the time. You never saw it. So to see it happening and see this magic trick that's kind of going on in front of your face, it captured me, left an impression. Regular movie theater, they don't let you in the booth. You know, you can't, especially now. What's you're going to see? A digital projector? Boring. So going into the Mahoning booth, having that be my first drive-in and seeing like, okay, this is like the big boy version.
Taking you back to that. Before. Were you a child when that happened, I take it?
I must have been, must have been 12, 13 years old. Probably.
What a cool dad, man.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm gonna just set up the projectors, run a show for the kids.
He was interesting too, because like I mentioned, we watched Johnny Sacco. He kept calling him Johnny Psycho. I'm like, what kind of movie is this? Like, I had a very different impression of what I saw, and then I saw it. I'm like, okay.
Oh, it's too fun. Yeah, those memories really stick with you. Are there certain movies that really captured you when you were younger? I mean, it's weird because as a kid, there's, I think, a discovery moment where you're like, people make these things, you know? For the longest time, I was always in that head state of like, you know, this is literally is other worlds being projected out here, you know? And when you had that young enough to be like, I know a guy that was in this movie.
Yeah, that was wild, because
That's
like
great.
that was, you know, when you're really learning about like these aren't just magic pictures that just appeared on this tape here. Like somebody had to actually go out and make this, and there's people involved. Yeah. And you know, and as years go by, you learn more and more and more about it. It becomes more fascinating than the movie itself. But going back to your question, I guess as far as like movies that captivated me as a kid, or that I'm very nostalgic about to this day, and this is a big movie with my family, is Hook. Hook might be, I think I have to rank that as my most nostalgic movie.
Yeah.
Because
takes you right back.
There's not even for, and I think I felt the nostalgia when I first watched it, which is a weird thing to say because nostalgia, I think about it a lot, and it's, to me, it really has less to do with the thing itself and more of it just being this weird key that unlocks this window of your brain of where you were at the time.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
You know, as a little kid, you watched all the Disney movies. I watched all those Disney animated films. I watched the newer ones at the time, and I really dug the older ones. So I watched like Peter Pan a lot as a kid, and I loved it. And then you see Hook, and in my mind was destroyed by it because I'm like, wait, I remember this. This is real. Like, you know, like that's, I love Dustin Hoffman in that movie as Captain Hook, because I'm like, oh my, it scared the hell out of me. I'm like, that's the cartoon come to life.
Yeah. And
you know, it's not really based off the Disney one, but you put associations in your brain, like, oh wait, this is from this. Like, I'm feeling this memory of this movie I only watched like last year. Like now I'm feeling it again, but it feels different now.
It is. It takes you back, you know.
Yeah,
we played Hook with Jumanji in like 2015, like way
back.
Right, I think when Robin passed.
Yeah, around that time. Yeah, that double feature, I would love to see that.
That'll come back. Hook
Because-
will always play well at the Mahoning, and we know who's doing the poster. I guess.
and Jumanji, and that Jumanji is very. I love Jumanji because I watched
Great memory in the theater, seeing that with my family. I'll never
I watched that new Jumanji, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this is garbage. Like this has no integrity to it at all. It was blockbuster
entertainment
stuff.
value, yes, but it becomes one of those things where, especially with that movie, where I was like, just call it something else. Do you have to connect it back to Jumanji? Like, I get the Hollywood push of nostalgia right now, of like, hey, if it's connected to a brand, then you get a whole older audience and blah blah blah. But yeah, something like that where you're just like, it's different enough from the original that you're just like, just call it something else.
Did I ever mention that I saw the filming of parts of Jumanji?
The new one?
The original.
What?
Did I never mention that? They shot that. I lived in the town of Keene, New Hampshire for 25 or so years. And when I was in college, the film production company came to town, and they all the downtown stuff you see in Jumanji was shot in the town that I lived at the time.
Yes, you did tell me that. Parish
Shoes sign is still on the wall in downtown Keene. It was painted there for the movie and left behind. All the scenes of the stampede through the central square of the town. We watched some of that get filmed. Some of my friends were production assistants on that. And we were film students at the time in the college up the street. So it was just like, oh my God, Hollywood is in town, and we can watch, what we want to do in front of us. And Robin Williams was in town, and Kirsten Dunst was in town. It was pretty crazy. So I always have a pretty soft spot for Jumanji in my cold
It
heart.
played incredibly well in the theater, and it still plays well.
Yeah.
In the theater, I remember it. It played for the whole family. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother. Everybody loved that movie. It was a ride.
Yeah, and that movie's heavy too. If you watch it as a kid, you're like, oh, animals running around, this is crazy, this is awesome. And then you watch it as an adult, it's like, no, this movie's about daddy issues. Like this is nuts. And I'm like, I love this. And then you watch the other one, and you're like, no, this is
certainly lacks all that heart. That's for sure.
Lacks all of it. And I was offended by it. I'm not, this is disgusting. This is
Well, it's funny because we did the 8th grade dance that we did last year for the kids of the middle school. They couldn't have their dance because of the pandemic, blah blah blah. So we brought them out, and the kids got to pick the movie that they get to watch. And the list that they came back with, I'm just like, this is what kids love.
And I never thought of all the ways we would see Last Tango in Paris on our screen. I didn't think it was going to be selected by contemporary.
It was a weird
8th graders.
choice for the 8th
It was,
grade.
but they're big fans of Brando and Butter.
We said, hey, whatever you want to see.
Oh Lord.
But yeah, so why don't we get into some of your inspirations as an artist and when you started working with art? I feel like over the time that I have met you and kind of discovered your work, I've seen it grow, so I can't imagine what that process has been since you were young.
Well, I definitely started at a very young age, as a lot of artists do. Like when you're in preschool and the teacher notices, hey, this kid is drawing a little more than stick figures. Like he's making sure there's 5 fingers on each hand. That's kind of the sign of somebody that had potential. And I was lucky enough to be one of those people.
Wow.
There's only so much that can be taught, but that's like an early indication I found in a lot of people, that even people that don't really pursue it, they just have it in them. And that goes with a lot of creative fields too. I'm sure you know that there's more to music than learning to play. You kind of have to have a natural inclination. Like you.
Oh yeah. I always thought that as a singer. I said I competed in competitions with people that could read, sheet music left and right, and I would win these competitions and be like, I don't know, I would feel bad sometimes that like I don't know. I do get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, and this is not to discredit anybody that trains really hard, because if you want to get good, you can only get so far by being 100% self-taught or just going with it. You really have to get some kind of instruction, or have that right kind of discipline to teach yourself in a right kind of way. But that's a whole other subject. But yeah, I really started from an early age drawing like random like comic books and stuff like that, watching movies. I wanted like action, and I took, like I said, I took a lot of inspiration from what was on TV at the time, what movies I was watching. I watched Star Wars at an early age. That really got me, like it did a lot of people. But you know, even stuff that a lot of people were into, I wasn't into. Like I hated Full House. Like every time it came on, I couldn't turn it off fast enough.
You're like TGIF this.
Well, you know what? Because I watched Power Rangers, and then you watch like a show that's like it, and you're like, why aren't they fighting? You know, this sucks. So you want
it's like Full House with fighting.
Yes, that's perfect. Or more so, Saved by the Bell, but the bully gets beat up. So there's no giant monster at the end of Saved by the Bell. So a lot of that carries over. Like it just feeds your brain. And when I realized that you could do this for a living like that, it actually coincided with film exactly, because one of my favorite artists / illustrators is a guy named Dave Dorman. And if you know that name, if you ever read any of the Star Wars Dark Horse comics from the early 90s, like Dark Empire or like Tales of the Jedi, he did all those covers, and they are iconic comic book covers. And I got a book of all of his Star Wars art in like 97, 98. And I flipped through it, and being a fan of those movies at the time, my mind was blown away. I was like, wait, there's more? Like, I couldn't believe
the story continues.
I'm like, that what? There's more than just what happened, the credits? Like, that's crazy. And it's like these beautiful paintings. I didn't read any of those comics until later, but that was enough to feed my mind. Just that one image gave me that inspiration to be like, this is wild.
Something I can do. Yeah.
And that really kind of put that germ of an idea, like this could be a thing where you can kind of do this and make a living, or at least to get some satisfaction out of life, you know, to be able to create this thing. And I that's thankfully carried on until, you know, today. And
that's amazing.
And you know, other artists I looked at, especially in later years, like I love Basil Gogos, who did a lot of those covers for famous monsters of Filmland.
Yes,
he's a big one. A lot of comic artists, really. Paul Pope, he was a big one. You see a lot of those Alex Ross covers at the time, those beautiful painted covers.
Oh yeah,
I want to do that. But then you realize, like, this is way harder than it needs to be. And I gave very good advice early on, like, don't paint comics. And I tried it, and I learned why, because this is really hard. But then, you know, you develop your own style, and I found that I was really good at very traditional brush and ink work. Like, I would look at a lot of Jack Kirby stuff, or I mentioned Paul Pope before, and he was big into that, and still is. That really kind of carried over how my style is today. A lot of it's very line art heavy. Not to say I can't paint full rendered. I actually love doing that. And I'm hoping maybe for a few posters this year to really do that. It just takes a little bit of time, and you want to make sure everything comes out.
I think that's the beautiful thing of having the posters regularly, pretty much every weekend, is I see you guys really flexing with the style, you know, where it's like the stuff that Hayden will try out as well. Like he'll try a different style on a poster. And even like I said, with the stuff that I saw originally on your Instagram feed, it feels totally different than the stuff that you do now. It's this kind of evolution of a guy finding his voice, you know, his style, which I found that is always the most difficult. You know, when I was in bands, it was always, hey, what voice, quote unquote, is appropriate for this project? And you really have to make that decision and choice. But to be able to do that with each individual project, or be able to kind of work on a style with these projects, must be really great.
Absolutely. The good thing about doing work for you guys, especially, is it presents a lot of opportunities, and a lot of different opportunities to say. I'm not going to say what I'm going to be doing this year, perhaps, just to kind of keep it
the suspense.
Yeah, exactly. You'll find out as it goes. But you know, based on things that we discussed, that you kind of let me pick. I'm like, this is there's some very different offerings in there, and it's an exciting opportunity. And even then, when you get those opportunities, you still want to twist them further. Like, how you make this even different than just like a central image. Like, here's an example. One of the other posters I did in 2020, and I can't believe I forgot about this, but for the Monster Mania.
Gosh, that's right.
That's one of my favorites. And I'm like, I think it was From Dusk Till Dawn, Halloween 3, and Creep Show.
Yeah, talk about a weird
not in that particular order, but that was, and I was so upset I couldn't go, but like I'm like I still have to contribute. Even if I can't go, I'm happy I can contribute to these weekends. And I was like, how do we do this different? You know, I can't do a mountain of people like I did for that video game weekend poster. I'm like, let's mix it up. So I'm like, let's look at these old comic book ads for like masks and stuff, or stuff you'd see in monster magazines.
Yeah.
Let's just do like an advert page for something like that. I think that really made it strong because it was a representation of the film that wasn't exactly the film, but it made
so
it unique.
perfect.
Yeah, and if we finally do video game weekend this year, I'm like, how do I do that different? Because that one, the original one I did, I'm so glad you guys are still thrilled about it to this day. But because my mentality has changed, I'm like, I could make this more interesting.
As you looked at it over time, you're like, I'm changing.
Well, you look at it, again, it's one thing to represent the film itself figuratively, but then it's something else to take it and throw an extra bit of a nostalgic element to it. I was looking at a lot of magazine ads for video games and things like that, for arcade games, and they were crazy with some of the stuff that they came up with. So, and even if you just kind of straight rip something off and make it your own, people have been doing that for thousands of years. That's still cool. Like, it's like, let's see if I can make this idea.
Oh yeah, it's the inspiration.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You said, that Monster Mania poster was amazing. Where it's just like, who would have thought that was the move? You represented all the characters in a very nostalgic kind of piece that reminded you of, the old days of the, ordering masks through the magazines and stuff like that.
Now that I think back, I should have included that, like a live monkey. You can order that because
that leapt out to me when I first saw your first Universal Monster Mash poster, was that this was clearly a guy who had knowledge of the 60s Monster Kid era and that look of old comic books and old ads and things like that. And I just loved it immediately. It looked like it was art that fell out of a time machine into our hands. It was great.
Yeah, I was born too late. Like, I should have been there. That would have been, I'm envious of the people that kind of grew up around that time. And that's so much cooler. Like, just that, everybody's into that stuff now, even though it's still a niche. But back then, if you were like into that monster stuff, you really had to seek these people out that were like just like you. And I want to kind of bring that feeling back of that unifying element, even though the Mahoning is kind of a magnet for that to begin with. To remind people, don't forget your roots. Don't forget that you were an outcast like 50 years ago.
That's right.
A total, that weird kid in school that didn't talk, but when you went home, you watched like The Amazing Colossal Man on TV.
Mahoning is a gathering place for those
absolutely
people.
And to give that feeling back, be like, hey, this is like something you would have loved when you were a kid back then. I like to appeal to that generation.
Yeah. Well, that's what's great is, your artwork is very nostalgic and can be very retro in its style, but it's modernized very much like our business model is. It's rooted in the past with a touch of that modern twist.
And at the same time, with an illustrator mindset in this, you also want, this might sound kind of cynical at the same time. You're also like, is this going to sell out? Because I want to do well for you guys and everything. Like, is this going to make money? Is this going to help pump up the show? I kind of come at it with a marketing standpoint too, because you want it to draw people in with the image.
Oh, it does.
That's why I thought I poured a good amount of effort into the Thanksgiving one too, because like this is like, I gotta get these people to this show. Like, this is definitely
the sell.
This is the opposite of the horror crowd right here. Like, we gotta get them in. And I got a lot of compliments on that poster.
That's such a great one.
Which I was very happy about. But yeah, and I talk with Sandy pretty frequently, and I always want to know like what's going on with the merch booth. Do you need anything for that? Are there cool new and different things
Yeah.
that can be done. You know, you got those stadium style cups now, those popcorn buckets. Like maybe we could do something cool for those for like the
Oh,
big
hell
shows,
yeah.
you know, put a little unique logo on those cups. Be like, this is different than the
Little
regular
collector's item.
Mahoning cup. This is the Monster Mash cup, or like the Camp Blood cup. I think you might have done that for
Yeah,
one
we
of
did a
those.
different design. I mean, that's the beautiful thing is, you know, as we grow, the opportunity for the merch items grow, the artists grow, and it becomes that's what I love, I think, most is just the creative energy of it all. Even with the podcast, it's, you know, it's able to touch into that creative element of wanting to create something, having an instant gratification off of something, and being able to do stuff that we do. We get flooded with that. It's incredibly rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like I'm saying, I'm always thinking of new ideas and how to maybe spread that even further. Even, you know, during like the off season, you know, for like the merch on the website, seeing about maybe we can get something exclusive on there. Like you can only get from there. It still
hell
spreads the
yeah.
word.
We have so many fans from all over the place that will never come to the Mahoning. It's just too far. And they support what we do, and they love buying merch, and having items available to those people are great. It's funny because I just did an interview promoting the season, and the interviewer asked about inspiration, you know, and what you would say to somebody as far as advice, you know, kind of coming up. And the one thing that I said is, if you have a dream, talk about it. You know, I feel like a lot of the success and destined meetings and things like that happened because I just put it out there. I talked to everybody that I could about it. If you could have a piece of advice for an artist or a creative person that is coming up right now, what advice would you give?
Oh, that's a very good question, because that's a tough one to answer, because I'm always thinking about that for myself anyway. Like I don't consider myself expert or a master or anything like that. I just say, well, one of the biggest hurdles a lot of people I talk to is just a lot of people get discouraged because they're unhappy with what they've done. Like they do one drawing and they hate it, and then they freeze up.
Yeah.
And my biggest piece of advice is just, even if what you do, if you think is garbage, even if what you do is terrible, just don't even throw it out. Just keep doing it. Do a million terrible drawings, and eventually you'll do one that you're like, you know, not even that you think is great, but one that you don't hate. You know, you want to get it to the point where you're like, I'm okay with this, and just keep going. It's just, that's really the secret to getting better and to gaining the confidence, is to not be afraid of failing at trying to do something, of doing something that you're not happy with, that you don't think is good, that you consider to be a bad piece. You know, it's there's education and information and everything. If it's bad, think about why you don't like it and then move on, but keep it with you, and you'll eventually, if you do it enough, it's not saying it's easy to get over, but you'll get over trying to be perfect all the time. I'm not a fan of being a perfectionist or anything like that. You almost want it to be less perfect. It's more organic that way, if that makes any sense. You know, not everything has to be a crisp drawing, or you can exaggerate things. There's always workarounds. There's rules that are meant to be bent and broken, but you'll never know that unless you keep trying. That's probably the biggest thing.
I love that. Persistence, you know, don't get discouraged by those things that may present themselves as hurdles. You jump them and you keep on going.
Yeah, and you know, the toughest thing is to even find that further motivation to keep going. Some people might need like a drill sergeant screaming at them,
or a podcast that going. You know, hits them at the right time. That's why I love always bringing it up. You know, I feel like the inspiration aspect that our story brings people it's such a kind of magical gift that we could never plan on. The idea of offering cool movies and preserving a cool theater, you know, that was the original goal. But the idea that this story inspires people to kind of go for the crazy, or go for what seems like impossible, it's such a gift, you know. And bringing that up always, just in case it hits that one person that is like, you know, maybe at that hurdle, and they're like, hey, I need that little inspiration to find that motivation ahead of me.
100%. Yeah.
Mark, you got anything for our main man, Tom?
Well, one thing we always ask everyone who's on the podcast is if you had a dream double feature, like if you could program a night or a weekend at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania, what would you select? Now, there is one that you talked about with us, which we might have mentioned on the show.
God.
At the post-season staff party.
Great suggestion. You got to toss it out there now.
All right, I'm gonna just bring this up. This is not my suggestion, by the way, but I gotta bring up this story. So this is at the postseason party last year, which I was very grateful to be invited to. It was really I loved it. So I'm talking with Daryl at the time, and we're just talking about like, what would be the worst selling,
most money losing week.
Show, what the most money losing show you could do. I'm like, it had to be something so lame, like a Don Knotts double feature, like Mr. Limpet and Ghost and Mr. Chicken. I was like, just get those on there. Who the hell's gonna see it? I'm joking about like, let's throw all these gimmicks in there. Anybody 80 years plus gets in for free. Like, and really, like, I thought nothing of it because I'm like, of the main audience that's gonna come here and spend money, who the hell's gonna come after that? And then we kept going on it. We kept going and going. We came up with a poster idea to have like these cutout Don Knotts masks, like the old paper ones. We came up with a food item, and it's and then we came up with the title. This was the gem. Because Daryl, he gave me a great piece of advice. It's like, listen, just come up with a good tagline, a good title, and odds are Virgil will make it happen. I'm like, all right, it's called Nuts for Knots.
Well, it's funny because you guys came to me and Mark at the time and pitched it, and right away we're like, that's amazing. Let's do that show.
Yeah.
You're like, what's the worst show we could do? And I'm like, I want to see that show.
I'd go.
That's fantastic. All of it.
Now, you mentioned, Mark, that you preferred the title Double Knots.
That was one that I
very good title.
A friend of mine at the Somerville Theater, my friend Ian Judge at the Somerville Theater in Boston, did a Don Knotts double feature of Limpet and Chicken. And I told him afterwards he should have called it Double Knotts. So it's still not been used.
It's on the table, but here's the thing. That title, as good as it is, it throws off the title for the food item.
What was the food item?
Or well, Daryl helped me with it. Is like you do homemade like Cracker Jacks, and then you take like a Twizzler and you tie it in a little bow tie, a little knot. You top it off on there, and he's like, you know what the name is? I'm like, what? Knots is nuts. I'm like, that was it. I'm like, we got a show.
That's how brilliance is born, sir. That's how brilliance is born.
That's the thing. A lot of these great ideas, you can tell, just come from nothing. And then we were like, wait, people might actually pay money to see this. So this whole conversation is moot because it's either going to be a disaster or it's going to be actually a surprise hit.
It sounds like a risk that we're willing to take.
Yeah.
The number of things we've done that started off with a joke.
Oh my God, yes.
It's a long list.
That's what's great. It's a lot of the programming. It's organic. We will literally be talking about something in the booth or chatting about something that's going on and be like, why don't we do this? But yeah, so fantastic.
And to answer the question, I thought a lot about this. I wrote a list of double features I would like to see. Well, I'll preface with this. One thing I'd love to see more at the Mahoning is I'd love to see animation more represented at the theater.
We've actually never, I think, touched on animation at the theater.
That's the thing. And I think that could be an excellent avenue, especially because you have this unique handicap in that you can't show the Disney animated stuff. So you kind of you're forced to really delve into the alternative non-Disney titles, there's still a plethora of amazing features out there and weird different stuff that you can combine. And I could go on about it forever, but something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is I'm very interested to see what kind of speaking of animation, I'm thinking what kind of anime is on film that could be played, and the list is hard to find. I've looked, but I would love to see like Akira on the screen.
Oh yeah,
that would be.
We brought that up at maybe when the Daryl Carl episode. That would be amazing.
Yeah, Akira would be awesome, and then you could have like the second feature would have to be another. It'd have to be a really different one or like another big one. Like Robot Carnival's really cool. Or if you had to do two big hits, you'd probably do Akira. And I think Cowboy Bebop the movie got a theatrical release, but I don't know if it's on 35.
I always would think Ghost in the Shell too.
Ghost in the Shell would be awesome. And I had Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack. I would love to see those. But then any of those like Studio Ghibli films, Fathom Events does
they
those
crush
at least once a year.
Every time we played those at the indoor, they would crush.
And to throw another one at you, aside from anime, I know you only asked for a double feature, but this is what you get when you invite me to the podcast. And I'm gonna shut up.
Program a month.
You know what would be a cool one is if you did a weekend, this would be a cool music show. You could have heavy metal and rock and roll.
Oh,
yes.
It's actually a cool, interesting one. That'd be a great musical double feature in like a weird alternative animation.
People love
weekend.
heavy metal. That gets requested a lot.
Oh, heavy metal is awesome. And I'm going to persist on this. I'm going to shove this down your throats that we need like a weekend of just animation. Even just a weekend of even if you just showed cartoons for like 2 hours or so like that. That would be cool. Do like Saturday mornings at night. You know?
I know the new Bev does they serve cereal and do like Saturday morning cartoons throughout their calendar. At least they used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that. I think the only time we talked about it was Beavis and Butthead and South Park. That was the two where we were like, if we're going to give it a shot, let's try it. But I think our fandom has changed, like that's almost too on the nose. Although Beavis and Butthead would crush. But yeah, we're going to make it happen. I think doing a nice alternative, maybe it's a fun thing to do on a Sunday, try it out and be like, hey.
Yeah, on a Sunday or that's the thing. It's a big category. That's what I'm saying. Like it could potentially take a weekend and you have like each night themed after like a certain genre or something like that. That's why the Saturday is cool. You show a lot of those syndicated, like maybe Warner Brothers cartoons, and then you could like top it off with like Transformers the movie.
Yeah, hell yeah. You got
oh my god, that Stan Bush would crush. Are you kidding me?
All day.
When I saw Boogie Nights, which is like one of my favorite movies, and I thought the You Got the Touch thing was hilarious and I loved it. Somebody had to tell me that was used in the Transformers movie first. I had no idea. And I'm like, oh my God, of all the things they're going to do is they're going to pull a song out of the Transformers movie and put it in this film. That was
know what? God bless him, because that song is excellent.
Yeah. We talked about doing a Ralph Bakshi weekend, which that's
my God. Okay, so you got me going here to kind of do an offshoot of that, because I am actually working on a piece right now involving Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and I love that movie.
He's got such a deep catalog, man. It's insane.
Oh, you could do Wizards. You could even do like American.
Yeah, Fire and Ice would crush.
Fire and Ice. I would almost save Fire and Ice. The theater is not that far away from the Frazetta Museum. If you actually talk to the Frazettas and kind of did a conjunction thing, you could do like a double feature of Conan and Fire and Ice, because those are both. One is very much inspired by Frazetta, and then the other, Fire and Ice, is just pure Frazetta, like unleashed. As nonsensical as it is, it's great. You could all those Bakshi ones.
We just got to come up with a fun title and make it work. I think we're in.
That's where you could go back to the drive-in history, so to speak, and do the more genteel film first, even if it's Bakshi. And the second film is Fritz the Cat or Heavy Traffic. The really much more edgy film plays second. That you either sit through the safe one to get to it, or anybody, you give them a chance to clear out before that second film plays.
I mean, if we're talking about like animators, I mean, heck, outside of Disney, the Disney connection, but not Disney, would be like Don Bluth.
Yeah,
I've said that for a while.
And you know what? We did play Land Before Time. That's I think one animation that we.
Oh, I remember.
We actually had to play it on digital though. So
I was gonna say Secret of Nim would crush.
I saw that when it came out.
Yeah, a little Feifel.
Oh God. Oh,
American Tail.
Yeah. that poster, I think, was on the original Struzan artwork. Like, you could actually buy that from a gallery. Like, I don't know if it's sold yet.
He has a gallery where he sells his originals, and the Cannonball Run poster comes up, and you look at the prices, and you're like, oh, yeah. If only I was a rich man. But it's amazing the idea that you could own those original paintings.
It's like, and you know what? I'm looking at the prices. Of course, they're outside of my price range by like a lot. But I'm looking at them, and I'm like, some people could buy this NFT JPEG of like a monkey, or you could buy the poster for freaking the American Tail for like half the price. You know, like, what are you gonna pick?
The NFT is the future version of DVDs that came with exclusive web links. Yeah. Why don't you pop that 1998 DVD in there and tell me how that website that is a bonus feature is playing for you right now?
As it sits there quietly.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, you could buy this thing that's like, I think it exists, or I could be like, yeah, this is the original key work for Fievel.
Well, why don't you tell the folks where they can find your work if they want to follow along?
Well, most of my stuff I post on Instagram /Tom Bifulco. So it's TOMBIFULCO. And my last name is a
Bifulco
to pronounce. No, that's not
Bifulco?
It's Bifulco. Yes.
Steven, I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Yeah, but I didn't want to be rude and correct you. I just wanted to let you say it wrong this whole time.
You were saving that up for the end.
Yeah.
And then it was your turn to pronounce it, and we all go.
For fucking 3 years, bro. Sorry.
He was playing the long game on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Showed you.
Well, we love you, brother. We appreciate so much your dedication to the theater, your work, as the fan base does as well. It's always crowd pleasing. And we can't wait to jump back in the saddle with you this year.
Keep an eye out, because there's going to be some big ones.
Yeah. You get the dirt early as one of the resident artists.
I got all the dirt early. And in fact, I'm going to be digging for more dirt. The more I can get out of you, the better, especially for later on when some of the big shows come. I haven't even hit the hardest summer yet. One of those. Yeah. I got at least one of those in the pocket right now. And I'm sure some of them, all I got to do is ask.
That's right, baby.
And I can maybe get a piece of it in some way, shape, or form. I've been doing we didn't even mention it. I did a lot more t-shirts last year.
That's something that really was born, I think, out of having you there and accessible to us is, we would work to get a poster, and then an event would sell out, and we're like, well, why don't we put this on a t-shirt? And then it became, why don't we do a separate t-shirt?
That was like another small, I know we're trying to end this, but I gotta go off on that, but that brings a whole new dimension to a lot more artists that are doing work for you guys, because it gives another opportunity, and it's another revenue source, and another just cool sign. I was there, doing that blob shirt for last year. That was the
home run. That was such
it in motion. And then the Tromathon, when I saw Lloyd Kaufman wearing my shirt, I'm like, you gotta
We had what was his name? The Tremblay. He was nominated for an Oscar for Room. He posted a picture on Instagram of him rocking that t-shirt. I think he's involved with the new Toxie movie. But how freaking crazy. God. It's like your art is traveling around the world and people are wearing it. It's nuts. Super fun.
It's too much.
Super fun. Well, again, if you guys want to check out Tom, check him out on Instagram. And we don't normally end the show with anything too fancy, but this is for you, Tom. Bangarang, my friend.
Oh, bangarang. Yeah.
All right. On that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.